the owner can get you outside if you're coming alone. There are some restaurants like this, yes, because you bring bad luck, and at the same time the menu is for 2 people, 3 people, or 4 people.
We were talking about food and the importance of food in Korean culture.
In all the cultures, I think. Even in the American culture, the food is important. The McDonald's, the KFC,
Yes,
it speaks something about the culture.
Yes. Well, actually there is an anthropological point of view.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. We were talking about, but where did you arrive in Korea? What was your first few days like? What were your first few days like?
Well, my first few days they were in Seoul. Then I went to Jinju, the city where I studied for 1 year, and everybody welcomed me. They were extremely polite. And
how many foreigners were there like you?
In the university where I studied, I was the only European. The only European, and there were like 27,000 students in total. It was a huge university.
But how did you breach this barrier of language? One of the most important barriers to breach.
Yeah, I got quite flexible with the languages. I started to understand some things that, as I told you before, I studied for 2-3 months. The language is important to know. It doesn't matter if you can speak fluently or you know too much of that language, but it is important also to know the culture. Because as my professor said in Korea, like the language is 50% of the culture.
Exactly.
Because
it's important to have the codes decrypted.
Yeah, but you can understand some things about their way of life also, and the interaction, the social relationships.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, I will give you an example. For example, in Korea or in China, US, when you meet somebody, instead of saying hello, you say, "Did you eat?" The name food in Korea, it's pap, but pap means rice.
Oh.
So when you ask pap mogasoyo, it means that you ask, "Did you eat rice?" Actually.
So how did you find the architecture? Let's talk a little about the architecture as well.
Yes,
I think
I made a connection with the food in the same way I make the connection with the architecture. I think through architecture you can understand the country you are in, even to the bad architecture, not to the super glossy star architect example. It's not that the architect.
The mediocre architecture.
The general architecture. The ordinary general architecture that you find in the street and like this. The temples, the monuments show you some concept, some philosophy that is very important. That is the base. But the general development shows a state of the society at one point in time. It's extremely connected with time, I think.
What I wanted to add about Eastern Korean, Asian view of architecture and of patrimony especially is that they think of it. It's very easy for them to reproduce temples.
It's a different approach of what?
Of monuments.
For them, the people who build it, who can build it, rebuild it, that people, the craftsmen, they are the monument, they are the patrimony. In Japan, they made them universal patrimony, they made it UNESCO patrimony, the craftsmen. The material is very important because in Korea, China, Japan, less China actually, but mostly Korea and Japan, the cities were filled of wood entirely. even at the beginning of the 20th century, there were wooden cities made of timber. So this use of the material allow them to change. Timber, wood is not something to last forever. It's not like the stone. We are countries made of stone. We have stone architecture. You see France, Italy. It started from Egypt actually. Because they build architecture. They build architecture. It's not only about resources. It's also about a way of seeing things. It's about eternal architecture. Architecture to live forever. Because you have the second life, the eternal life. So you must build something like the Egyptians built for the pharaohs, the pyramids, something to last forever. A church is made of stone, but the house, for example, it can be made of wood. It's also about the resources, but it's also about the meaning, the monument. But the temples in Korea, in Japan, they are made of wood. And wood cannot last forever. But the temple lasts forever, lasts for centuries, for millenniums. And they are changed. Of course. But it's normal. They are rebuilt in the same way. Because they protect the craftsmen that build it. So periodically, they rebuild.
Another point that I would like to insist on is also the way Korean people live in cities. It's not always about monuments, but it's also that they like living. They like living in towers, right?
Oh, of course.
They love living in towers. For them, it's the best comfort.
They are comfortable.
Yes.
The towers that you see, the forest of entire districts of towers, they are extremely comfortable. They have 150 square meters per apartment, and they have everything there. They don't have to take care about the garden, about anything
No,
else.
but I'm thinking this in parallel with, for example, Paris, where in Paris,
yes, they are
all towers are maybe they're prohibited or maybe they're destroyed. Everybody is not. They hate towers.
Of course,
But used to living in towers.
It's always a problem of density and number. For example, China is all about the number. There are so many, and everything reduces to this number and the density, because you have to give people a place to live, and the house is not suitable. It's not enough, and but the Japanese made a very interesting model, like a huge sprawl with low rise, high density.
And one of the third points in the things you want to talk about in your series is nature.
Nature, yes.
And the relationship with nature.
The nature, and especially the relationship between the human and the nature, is extremely important, and it also shows different aspects from country to country, from culture to culture. For example, as I told you before about the reconstruction of the temple, in Korea what is protected is the tree. They reconstruct the temple, but they keep the trees outside the temple.
Yes.
And another thing about the relationship with the nature is the fact that the mountain is sacred. They never build on the mountain. They don't go up on the slope. Everything is on the flat, because in Korea they have this saying, the mountain behind, the river in front. This is the way they build cities. And the highest point in Korea is 80% mountains. So everywhere you look, you will see mountains. Not very high, but the highest building in a city it's a temple or a school, a Confucian Academy. You can easily see this. You can go anywhere on a high building and to see all the landscape, and the highest point is taken by the by cultural building.
So there is a part actually that we left out of, intentionally left out of, of this discussion, because this is actually an introductory interview, and it's important to say that these photos will not only be from Korea, but most importantly from the journey back from Korea to Romania, because this was unbelievable. You took the train, you went on foot, you went by car,
Yep. Yeah.
and
From
you
Korea
got back home to Romania in 25 days.
Yeah.
Through China.
By Chisinau.
Exactly.
Via Chisinau. And
So
yes,
I think it's just
it was 24 days of
24
travel.
days.
Yes, continuous travel like this.
I think it's best to leave the rest to a surprise. You will see, it's amazing.